Our first guest embodies everything this show stands for. He's a leader shaped by lived experience, service, and a deep commitment to community. Honorable Adegoke Fadare is a public servant whose journey reflects resilience, purpose, and the courage to lead with integrity. From navigating life in a new country to stepping into public leadership, his story speaks to the power of perseverance and what is possible when we choose service over self. Beyond titles and roles, he is a mentor, a bridge builder, and a voice for those too often unheard. Today, we'll explore identity, leadership, belonging, and redefining success, not just as an achievement, but as an impact. Please join me in welcoming a leader whose journey reminds us that where you start does not determine where you can lead. It's truly an honor to welcome Honorable Adegoke Fadare to the show. I want to express my sincere gratitude for your presence and the speech you gave at my book launch last year.
I'm still waiting for the video though,
Exactly.
but it's all good. It'll be nice to hear it again.
I promise I will send it to you.
It's all good.
And I've always wanted to ask, what moved you to deliver such an impactful speech at the book launch and also on behalf of the community?
Obviously, I look at the journey that you've had. A couple of events that you and I have been part of. A couple of events. I remember the event around Black Health Affairs. I remember that's what we titled it as, because I've always been passionate about how do we get our people to live healthy, right? Mm-hmm. And I found it an amazing partner, in you, and I think it was a beautiful experience. So all of that added to what I call the building blocks to be able to deliver, what I thought was how I felt about things, my perspective, and the kind of work I've seen you do, and just even the fact that, how you were there for your father, those moments. I think there were words that needed to be echoed because it's tough. Mm-hmm. It's tough for you, not just the person who is going through the circumstance, but the person who is also the carer. And I think that perspective is what I saw in the book, and that kind of shaped my thinking regarding the kind of words I used.
That's so touching. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So when you hear rooted in story, rising together, what does that mean to you personally?
It almost seems to echo some of the things I've always said, especially if I want to bring in the context of the Black community, right? Mm-hmm. I remember there was a particular theme for, when I served in a particular organization, not for profit, that I called Elevate and Unite. Mm-hmm. It's almost the same, different use or play of words, but it's all about recognizing that our story is our story and that nobody else can tell your story, right? At least not as effectively as you can. And I see that many a times we don't own our stories. Mm-hmm. So I see this as an opportunity for people to be able to express and tell their own stories with their own voices in the language and the experiences, like what people call lived experiences. Mm-hmm. And I think that begins to bring about an equilibrium where people can begin to rise together. Because when your story is said, I can feel and see myself in that story. So it becomes relatable. I feel like I'm a part of it. And I begin to see what is possible. It begins to paint pictures in what I call in the tablets of my heart. Mm-hmm. And that begins to stir what I call an activation energy within me to be able to overcome whatever single barrier that I might be facing as a person or as an entity, as the case might be. So I think stories are important because it allows people to have a sense of belonging.
And that's why we say here, rooted in story, rising together.
Yeah.
Take us back to your first days in Canada. What did hope look like? And what did fear even look like?
The funny thing, when I was coming to Canada, a friend of mine is still in Nigeria, lives in Nigeria, was saying to me at that time, I never knew or understood the impact. He said, "You're perhaps the most prepared Nigerian going to Canada that he knows." And I never understood what it meant, obviously because I did all the entire research. I literally was in Canada in my mind, even though my physicality at that point in time, I was still in
Nigeria.
Nigeria. I knew everything. I knew the price of a gallon of water, a liter of water, because I did all those investigations. I also was well prepared because there were fantastic organizations that had presentation, all-day presentation in Nigeria. So I knew the schools, the house we were going to live in, we already had it paid for before we...
Wow.
So there was a lot of things that... And I think that's important about life, that you have to be prepared for the next phase, your next level. And you don't stumble into success. I always tell people, people have said, and I echo it, that success is not accidental, right? There's a lot of deliberate. So the things that have happened over time, when I reflect on them, I recognize that a lot of it is because there was a lot of preparation around and about it. I didn't stumble on many things in the context of... Obviously, still some level of stumbling, if you get what I mean, but not in the fact that I wasn't aware of what I was going to. But there was some fears. I remember when I first of all came, obviously I came as a what they call PR, so there was some proof of fund you were meant to have, but I thought, I didn't know how bad the exchange rate was. So my mind was that the first 6 months, I was just going to relax. So I worked so hard in Nigeria that I said, 6 months, I'm not going to work. But the day I had to pay for the first payment, for my place, and I was like, what? That amount of money disappeared from my car. So I can't afford to work. I can't afford to have a vacation. So I had a lot of fears. I saw the price of cars. That was one of my big fears. And I was like, man, I can't afford this. So I used bus, with my kids. I took my kids because it was pretty much expensive because, like anybody starting out fresh, you want to manage your cash flow.
Excellent. I agree with that. So what I can take from what you just said is that you did your research and your preparation.
Yeah.
Those two things.
Yeah. It was so bad because there was a particular group I was in which a lot of Nigerians were at that time. And I was always asking questions. So there was one day I asked a particular question. Somebody just said on the group, oh boy, just calm down.
Just relax.
Just relax. Because I wanted to know everything before I came, so which was good. And I think that it's important for people to be prepared for whatever they're planning to do.
Absolutely. So you've already kind of talked about the early challenges, but I want to ask this specifically in the sense that what early challenges shaped the leader we see today?
So I would call it a challenge. So obviously when I was arriving, and that shaped some of the policies, in terms of that I created, when I had the opportunity. I landed obviously in a country that I've never been to before. I didn't come for some people call soft landing, that you're coming in and you're going back. No, I sold everything, right? So
this is it for me.
This is it. I don't believe you how some people say touch the water, you test the water. No, and I just plunged in. So, but I was fortunate because I had a friend who was living in British Columbia. So he just moved some weeks earlier to Nova Scotia. So that offered me an opportunity to get what I call my first pickup from the airport, right? And he picked me up from the airport. I remember when I was going to pick me up, he was asking, do you have car seats? Are you coming with car seats and all that, just to make my pickup from the airport to my hotel at that point, because my house wasn't ready for me to move in at the end of the month. And so all of that was in place. But it was a bit of a challenge for me in the context of the fact that if I didn't have someone like him, because he picked me up from the airport, they offered my family and I the first meal. And that's why eventually I decided to do what was called the airport pickup. That finally picked up 82 families, over 300 plus individuals from the airport, and gave them their first meal in Canada for free of charge. And it was that shaped that kind of mentality and mindset that, there are a lot of people who have traveled maybe 10, 14, 15 hours of flight into a land they have no idea of. And that began my conversation even with government, because I felt like there's a limit to how far we can go as individuals, that you require the partnership and the engagement with government. So that obviously led to a whole new world, because I brought in a different perspective from what was the conversations on ground at that point in time, to be able to have newcomers settle in here.
Well, was there a moment you questioned whether the journey was worth it? And what kept you going?
Not really. I've always, like I said, I didn't do it accidentally. I was very deliberate. Coming to Nova Scotia meant a lot of boxes. I lived my life in Lagos, or Lagos, as some people would call it, and it was surrounded by the Atlantic. Nova Scotia is surrounded by the Atlantic. I saw a lot of similarities, but I also saw the possibilities. And I think that's what stood out for me about Nova Scotia. When I came in here, I knew what I wanted to do. And obviously faith and many things happened. I was one of the very few people who probably got in here within a week or two of arriving, got a job. You know, my first job was to be an assistant brand manager at Still Auto Group to manage a brand called Genesis. And it was funny because I got in, I saw the advert, I just put it in, and then I had an interview with the GM. And funny enough, myself and the GM are still best of friends today. And it was literally a conversation, and also possibly I'd never sold cars before in my life, but I could sell for a living. You know, because I always say to people, you're selling something. Either you're selling an idea, you're selling a concept, a way of life. Either you're selling something. If you're not sure what you're selling, then there's a problem. But you are in the product of, in the business of selling something.
I think what I can gather from everything that you've said so far is that your story reminds us that resilience isn't born in comfort, it's forged in moments of uncertainty and the courage to keep moving forward.
True. And it's the truth, because obviously if I know people have different stories, and that's why I tell newcomers, the kind of people you meet at the beginning is very vital, right? And, you know, but I was opportune to, you know, to meet the right kind of people, right? And to have those type of conversations. I really, really would celebrate Mike, you know, GM, well, he used to be GM of Still Hyundai, I think is now in still within the Still Auto Group. You know, Mike Curry has been an incredible individual, and his words, his wisdom helped shape me in a lot of regards. And I'm truly grateful for that. So mentorship is key. That's what I'm trying to drop.
How did navigating identity, being an immigrant and a black man, shape how you lead today?
This is a bit controversial. In obviously, first of all, there's a lot of narrative around what does it mean to be black, in terms of what does it mean to be an African Nova Scotian. That conversation is still ongoing, right? I have my viewpoint. My viewpoints are very strong. I honestly believe that anybody who is black, who has a black ancestry, you know, is an African Nova Scotian, because we've seen African Nova Scotians marry what I call historical black communities. That's what I rather call them. We've had marriages around and everywhere. So at some point, how do you begin to say this one is not, without being, you know, like discriminating or something? So I recognize who I am. I'm confident in the color of my skin. I'm confident in my accent. I'm confident in the pace and the speed in which I talk. I think people need to get to a place where you're comfortable and cognizant. You're going to meet all kinds of opposition. You know, I see a lot of people. I remember originally where I call a bit narrow-minded. So if you don't use washroom, if you use other words like bathroom or toilet. They act like they don't know what you're saying. But I kept on, you know, because at the end of the day, I think it's important. Canada and Nova Scotia is what you call a plural kind of state, a multicultural, and people must have what I call a diverse, broad mindset. You can't have a narrow mentality, you know, if you want to thrive or if you want to live, you know, as Nova Scotia. So that is important. So that's why I never changed my first name. I never changed. I taught people how to pronounce it. And if you can't pronounce it right, it's still all good. You know, I've had people say, oh, why don't you shorten your first? I said, no, because it has meaning. You know, so for me, that's me being able to say to myself, I understand who I am, I understand my purpose, I understand what I'm doing. And I think that's why it's important for us to transfer this to the next generation.
Absolutely.
I spend a lot of my time doing things about the next generation, and I think and the reason is because at the end of the day, you only have an amount of time you can live here on Earth, right? But you have a people, a generation coming that require your leadership. And I'm cognizant that I'm blazing some trails, and I'm not blazing it for myself. I'm blazing for the next person, because I think it's our job to paint pictures in the hearts of people so they know what is possible, and they can try to begin to remove the limits and to aim for things I call, you know, glorious heights.
So what I can gather is that you inspire, you inform, and you empower the next generation.
Most definitely.
When did you feel a sense of belonging here? Or is belonging something we continue to build?
Well, I would say there was a moment I felt myself belong. Like I've always... See, the truth of life is nobody's going to, you know, when you have some people who say, oh, we need a seat at the table, nobody's going to offer you a seat at the table.
No.
You know, I always tell people that if nobody offers you a seat at the table, go to the forest, cut down a tree,
And-
carve and create your own,
and create your own space.
That's the mentality and the mindset I have. I understand that not everybody has that because of maybe the experiences that they've had. But the truth of the matter is that the experiences of the color of your skin, or maybe the color of your passport, or what your history or your historicity is, should never be a limiting factor, right?
Yeah.
Either you should use it to become a launching pad to be able to take it to the next level. I always tell people that the stories you tell are either going to limit you or going to release you. And I'm careful about the stories that we say. And that's why events like this are important, and I cherish it, because it offers us to be able to tell the right story. Because the stories people are saying is the reason why we have been limited in our expression. So people's stories are captured based on their experiences from how people treated them.
Exactly.
You shouldn't do that. People will treat you the way they want to treat you. The question is, how are you going to treat the world that you live in? So I think that life must be lived proactively and not reactively. So that's the mentality. And I'm hoping that in the next generation, I see some young people in the audience who will become cognizant about that truth. People can call you anything. That's so some people are more conscious. Oh, somebody said this, they come. I'm not. That doesn't affect me because I'm not trying to react.
Yes.
I'm trying to change my world. I think somebody once called it being a barometer, or being what's it called, the other one. So barometer changes the pressure or the atmosphere. So that's what I want people to think about. And I want to say that's all Black persons, whether you're from the historical Black community, you're a Black immigrant, or not even just Black,
underserved communities.
Racialized, underserved, undeserved. Just recognize that your story of yesterday doesn't have to be your story today. You can tell new stories. And telling new stories require you to be willing to see things in a different perspective.
Absolutely. And what parts of your culture, I know you're Nigerian and Yoruba by tribe, what parts of your culture and upbringing have remained central to who you are?
Back then I used to actually argue with people that I'm not Yoruba, even though my father and mother are, because when I was in Nigeria, I always see myself more as a pan-Nigerian. Because I think that, we must begin to consciously, culture is good. Well, exactly what is culture? Culture is generally what most people have agreed to at different points and phases in time and in life. So culture is never supposed to be stagnant. And I think that's where people get it wrong. I think people get stuck in the past. I refuse to be stuck in the past. I'm cognizant and conscious and I appreciate the past. But I don't allow it to be what defines me in its entirety. It has some definition in where I'm coming from. So I would say, obviously, a lot of I've been my upbringing from my parents. Funny enough, I started recording something I called lessons from my father, because I felt that there's a lot of things my father taught me that I think the world needs to know and echo. And one of the things I said recently when I was thinking about it was, I'll say it in Yoruba, he said it's called Ishe Lugunshe, which simply means that the cure for poverty is hard work. So my father taught me that you must work hard. And then I saw his story, I heard his story, how he would work, hundreds of couple of kilometers to fetch water. And I saw what he became out of life, become an electronics engineer, serving, in government and all the things he was able to do. His background had no idea that he could become that. And so when I see things like that, he wants me to go out there to tell people, you don't have to let what you have in your pocket or you don't have in your pocket determine your dreams. You can unleash your dreams regardless of the restriction. So many people don't do many things that they're supposed to do because they're looking for validation, they're looking for approval, they're hoping that their friends will like the idea, or they're thinking about what they're counting or they're not counting. I remember when I was going to start Dare to Dream Camp, and I was talking to people about it. We had no money about it. People thought I was crazy. I had a particular month. I said, we're going to do it in August. I set out the dates, $0, no budget. But at some point, because I always believe that provision always will follow provision. That as long as the vision is very clear, it would unlock the treasuries. And all of a sudden, over $52,000 came for us to be able to do the very first Dare to Dream Camp. And I think because people define their vision simply because of their experiences or their pocket. Your vision, your vision must never be defined by that. Your vision must be defined about what is possible, what you see to be possible, what your purpose is, what your goals are, and not what you're not counting, or who is not in your circle, because all of that can change. Absolutely.
I concur with that. My father, came from humble background and he loved education. And whenever he went to school, his dad obviously is a product of his own environment. My dad was the first son. He would come to school and chase him out of the class with basket and machete and head to the farm. And because he couldn't fulfill his passion, but he swore that all his generations will be educated
So I keep
to the
adding.
highest. And also, I agree with you. Those days, they used to trek kilometers to the farm to go to the stream to fetch water. And this is someone that was born in the village. And how he ended up in Lagos, say, for example, rural Canada, and then he ended up in Toronto, Vancouver. I was born in Toronto, Lagos, and he, raised his children, and he instilled that hard work, discipline, and knowledge, and he passed that
to everyone.
So I agree with you that once you have a vision and you work hard, anything is possible.
And it's true. So I grew up with, I don't know how, it's not one of those things you call politically correct, but we should say this growing up. Excuses are tools of the incompetence, monuments of nothing. Those who use them are unwise and they rarely succeed in life. So we were trained never to give excuses because everybody has an excuse, but you only make a difference when you rise beyond the excuse.
Little did we know that those were building blocks of resilience.
True.
That's why they say Nigeria no dey carry last. Wherever you are, if there's no Nigerian there, nothing is happening there.
Well, they say more like there's no Nigerian there, get away from there or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. So have there been moments when you felt unseen, and how did you respond?
I think it's hard for, I've never felt that way, to be honest. Not because people didn't try to do or make you feel that way, but I didn't, because like I said, you must know what you carry. I've always been cognizant of what I carry on the inside of me, would stand power or, anywhere, any standard, anywhere, any day. And that's why I always tell people, know your gift, work your gift, develop your gift so well. Whether it's your gift of oratory skills, right? Which is a gift of communication, your ability to paint the picture that people can see so vividly and jump into it. Whatever that case is, you must develop that. So for me, I've never, like I said, my life, I see life from being proactive. So I haven't. Yes, there are people that would try to, like, obviously, just even being an MLA, somebody would send you something and say something like, I hope you care for our environment. I know that you have just recently come or something. You get those kind of mails, but, but that's the person's perspective, right? I remember a member of my team was saying, you shouldn't be responding to the email. I said, I respond. It's still a constituency of mine. I represent the good, the bad, and the ugly. So that's the way I see life. I represent everybody, whether you voted for me or you didn't vote for me, whether you like me or you don't like me. My job is to be your voice, to advocate for you, to be able to help you, as best as I can.
Absolutely. On that note, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. Let's talk about leadership, service, and responsibility. Leadership often looks glamorous. What does it truly demand behind the scenes?
Well, I've seen people say that it looks glamorous until they jumped in. And they jumped out. It costs you your time. It costs you a lot, especially when it comes to leadership that you're not even being paid for, right? Especially within the not-for-profit. I've always been a community person. And I always believe that you win as a team. So my mindset is that you must always build. You must build teams, concentric circles around you. And that's what I've always done. I've always deliberately spent time, because you can run as fast as you want, but at some point in time, you can only carry as far, right? So I've always devoted my time building communities, building teams and all of that stuff. So I know that when people see the lights or people see people have no idea of what it really costs you until they get into it and they realize that, man, it's not even worth it, in the long run. And I think for me, what separates, is I understand my why. And I always tell people, regardless of whatever you're doing, whether it's out there in the front or back, understand why you're doing what you're doing. the why makes the difference in everything. It causes you to touch your passion and causes you to be able to deliver at a certain level. For me, I've always believed that people are important, people matter. And that's why I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve the people of Clayton Park West. So every single day I'm thinking of how can I help to make life better for them. I look at the seniors, and we came up with things around shingles-free vaccine for seniors. We came out with the RSV vaccine because I'm thinking, okay, this thing costs money, and I recognize that the older you get, the less money or less income you make. So how can we help to ensure that life is not unbearable, but life becomes bearable for the seniors? So those are the things that, because I understand my why, I'm able to see who the stakeholders are, what I call the critical stakeholders. Everywhere I go, I look at where are the critical stakeholders and how can we design programs, initiatives in such a way that we're able to meet and affect those people. So for me, I would say it costs you your time, it costs you your creativity, and then by the end of the day, it's worth it for me because I live, breathe to be able to see how I can make an impact, to the next person.
It's a fulfillment, isn't it?
It is. It's a lot of fulfillment. I love what I do. Whether you pay me $1 or you pay me nothing for it, I gladly do it any day. As long as it offers me the opportunity to be able to make real and lasting impact.
Yeah, I agree. And how do you stay grounded when expectations and scrutiny are high?
I'm a person of faith.
Because it comes with the package.
Yeah, it comes. I'm a person of faith, and so like I always tell people that you must understand what is it you're trying to do. You must know what you're trying to achieve and the price it costs. So there's a price to being out there, and I'm fully cognizant about it. And so that price also sometimes affects and translates to your spouse if you're married and to your kids. Yeah. So I try to make everybody aware about those prices, and obviously do my best to also shield them from the things that they need to be shielded, from in terms of attacks and all that stuff. But there's a price for leadership, and I'm aware of, the best example I could give right now is, the prior organization I was in, and there was a lot of, people said all kinds. Somebody even said, oh, he doesn't even have a job, he doesn't have a work, until somebody said, he's my boss, it's my, and so I've seen and heard all that stuff, but I've always learned that to be grounded, you keep your peace. Because I recognize that those who make the loudest noise most times don't have much to offer. So I always believe, someone would say that silence is good. So
silence is golden, they say.
Yes, it's golden. So I try, most times not to respond to many things, and to just, and when I'm at home, I try to not take work home as best as I can. I try to deliberately, I create we have days of game night with kids. So they know the days, so they look forward to it. So they recognize in their mind that, Daddy is very busy, we don't have his time, but we know this day, this time, I'm going to have that. We're going to play hide and seek, we're going to play board, all kinds of games, So those are things that keep me grounded, recognizing why I'm doing what I'm doing, recognizing the fact that, we're making and affecting the next generation, and hopefully that's going to have a lasting impact.
Absolutely. What does, particularly going back to what you just said, I actually love that family time. And you're right, kids actually look forward to that because they know I have that 100% now. Yeah. He's present, and that's what matters. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's not the quantity of time you spend with the kids, it's the quality of time. Yeah. Because you might be there being, like you said, take walk home, and you're being distracted, but you're visibly you're there, but emotionally you're not connecting with your children. So I agree with them. Okay. So what does service mean to you as a daily practice, not just a title?
So, service basically simply means being, giving of yourself to people, right? I look at a particular Thursdays, for example. By noon on a Thursday, I probably have met more than 6 residents in my office, right? All kinds of things, ranging for, and the work we do is such amazing work that you're talking to people sometimes where they're most vulnerable. You're talking to maybe a couple that are going through a tough time, and they feel like, they needed someone to be able to express their challenges, or whether it's somebody going through an immigration issue, or a mother who has a child that has a special need and wondering, how can I navigate a service within government? Or somebody who doesn't have an income and is trying to figure out, what does the income assist looks like. People in sometimes their most vulnerable state. Most of the time, it's not even about local issues. It's not about the big headline news that you see in the newspaper. Sometimes we find those things, right? But it's about individual, personal, life-changing issues where sometimes you don't have all of the answers. Sometimes it's just a word of counsel. Sometimes just the ability to listen. And I think that goes a long way for a lot of individuals. So for me, service is about being there, being present, being available. In Clayton Park West, when I ran, the constituency office was not even in Clayton Park West. I remember during the debate when somebody asked me to make a promise that I was going to bring the constituency office back into Clayton Park West because it was in Bedford South. And one of the very first things, and I understood why the person didn't, when I started looking for space, I realized, okay, that's why the person went somewhere else because it was obviously Clayton Park West was a bit pricey. But I said, you know what? I'd rather be where people are. And where we are presently is where people are going to get their groceries, going to get their medicine. They can easily have
accessibility.
Where it's part. It's not like going to see your MLA is a chore or it's a real work. It has to be like going to do any and every other thing that you do, right? And so that's where we make governance common to people. So for me, those are key things that I pushed, and I've seen that. Where we had an open house, I remember someone telling me, "Oh, he's done many open houses before. He's never had more than 4 persons." We had over 100 people because we're willing to be where people are, right? I think that it's a lot of work for people already needing services to travel journeys that you need to be right there. And I'm excited the fact that we're right there in the community of Clayton Park West, where we can easily access it. You can go get your groceries, but you can also go and see your MLA. No big deal.
I draw a lot of similarities from what you said. I'm a family doctor as well. It's that accessibility, in the community. And we underestimate the significance of this physical presence of the facility. And I'm bridging that gap so that it's in everybody's
making it common. It's not anything.
Life. Exactly. And so that's so special. I'm so proud. I'm sure all your constituents will be proud of you.
Well, at least for 109 people to show up at your barbecue, so at your open house, I'm telling you, it means a lot. As in, obviously, it sent a lot of message to someone like me because that was the very first time I was ever doing an open house. And obviously when people have told you stories before that, people don't really count for those things. And you're like, okay, something's working here.
Okay. Absolutely. Absolutely. And how do you make decisions when there are no perfect answers, only competing needs?
Yeah, so that's governance for you. Obviously, I'm not just an MLA, and it's important that there are different hats I wear. I know that that's why sometimes I try to do videos to try to explain to people what some of these things are. So there's an MLA. My work as an MLA, so I represent everybody in Clayton Park West. That's what I'm elected. But that's what the primary responsibility is to sit in the legislature. Really, that's what you're actually paid to do, right? And so I'm also a legislator where we make laws. So because of that, I have what they call everybody belongs into a caucus, right? Where I belong to the PC caucus, which at those moments, they're the governing, the governing party. And then obviously I'm also what you know as a Ministerial Assistant, because you're in the governing party, you also might have the opportunity to serve in the cabinet, right? I don't serve in the cabinet, but I serve as a Ministerial Assistant where I'm in charge of work with Tim Orman in service efficiency, which basically is reducing red tapes and making life easy for people. So I think it's important for me to, to lay that out there,
Well, I wrote down here that your journey reminds us that leadership is less about position and more about responsibility, integrity, and the weight of everyday decisions.
True. So how do I make those decisions? I try to get all the information that I can. You will never make a perfect decision, and you will never be able to satisfy everybody, right? But I will not make a decision until I've listened to all the facts that are possible, right? So there are always different things around that I keep weighing, but we make decisions to say, are we at least moving the goalposts? Are we moving this story forward? Based on what, so those are some of the things I look at. But at the end of the day, you have to make a decision as a leader. It's not just going to be hearing and listening. You also have to make those calls. And I recognize that those calls are weighty. Sometimes they're important. So I need to be able to make sure that I have a great grasp of what the issue is and what the various and varying opinions are around these issues.
Absolutely. Similar to us, like family doctors, the patient will come in and, you listen, you active listening, you examine, and you get to diagnosis. You're like, how do I communicate to this patient that I don't quite know the diagnosis yet, but these are the possibility. These are what we call in our medical language, differential diagnosis. And then how do we formulate a management plan regarding our suspicion? So it's just what I'm learning, that there's a lot of similarity. Obviously, we're leaders.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a doctor. You're field, and what I can see there is just that you have to make a decision at some point.
That's
People,
right.
I have junior residents that will come to me and ask me questions, and then I have to make a decision and based on, okay, how do I minimize risk? Make sure, my management plan is safe. How can I make decision based on the best interest of the patient and make sure that we arrive at the best possible outcome?
Yeah, true. And my own job also, we're willing to recognize where we've made the wrong call. That's where we have an amazing premier.
Accountability.
We will come back and say, okay, we're changing course because, this was definitely, I think because at the end of the day, the best of men are still men at their very best.
Exactly.
Right? Or women, as the case may be. So I think it's important for that to also be underscored that, I'm not going to make the perfect decision, but when I recognize that we've made a bad one, we will be willing to acknowledge it.
Acknowledge that. You've said a lot of interesting things about and your hard work, your journey, and everything you've talked about. But then I want to know how do you balance your health and humanity? So because public service can take a toll, how do you protect your mental, emotional, and physical well-being?
I think first from the mindset that, that I believe in winning all aspects of my life. I do know that for some aspects you will struggle, but you keep at it. Like somebody said, you only lose when you give up, right? So I've been trying to work a lot more on my health. It's one of my 2026 goal.
Yeah.
I know in 2025 I started trying to do 1 hour walks, and then it faded a bit. So we're back at it again. We're hoping we'll fade off again.
I always say every little helps. As long as you keep going, keep trying, and not giving up.
So that's what I'm doing. I'm getting back up again.
Exactly.
But I recognize that humans were created to be to be in constant motion. We're created to be active. If you look at your surrounding, everything is constantly moving, right? Even the planet you and I live on, right, is in constant motion. So I believe that it's important for us to stay active regardless of the seasons of life.
Yes.
Because sometimes we try to say, okay, because it's this season or that season. So even this winter season, sometimes I've gone out on those long walks, even at some really double-digit figures. So because I'm beginning to recognize that in order for me to be able to carry on the vision, my body must be able to carry me.
Exactly.
And somebody once said, health is wealth. So,
health is wealth.
So I'm trying to get wealth in the health. So
wealth in the health. That's a good one. Have you ever had to pause or redefine success for the sake of your health?
Maybe for the sake of my mental health, maybe.
Yeah, it's part of it.
Yeah. So there are many differences about leadership in Nigerian leadership in a Canadian setting. The average Nigerian is,
go.
Doing that, happening. And I've learned how to reverse or re-engineer that concept, right? When you have a team of people and, we always think, get it done now, and all that. But I've learned to redefine that to recognizing that everybody has their pace and that it's not my job to get everybody to work at my pace. That's the mentality that I've come to adopt and agree with. Back home, it's very different. When your mother tells you to do something,
it means I want it done now.
Yeah, but I begin to recognize that, at least my perspective in that regard about leadership really has changed. And the most important thing is that the thing is done, and the person understands all the parameters, and also be recognizing that if you give somebody something, you don't have to micromanage them. Because that's one of the things we do a lot, from the culture I was used to originally. We do a lot of micromanaging, hand holding, and all of that. I've learned to trust people. And I realized that what that does to people is that it builds people's confidence, right? And it makes them recognize that, they have a sense of ownership and a sense of belonging. That's what it means to have a sense of belonging, where you feel like you have been given a task or responsibility, you have a lane or you have a position and you have a place. And then you're allowed to be able to be you in that place. And so that's one of the things that have shaped me, and has helped my mental health to a lot, So I sleep better.
Yes. I've just learned to also designate tasks to the right person, because you can do it all. If not, you'll burn out. And what does balance look like for you now between career, family, and self? Do you have this overall state of, balance in every aspect of your life, for example, physical, emotional, financially, career? Like, where are you?
So obviously there's something that we create systems. Systems are always important. So when it comes to money, create a system around it. When it comes to leadership, create a system around it. One of the things that I think I've been able to do very well is I've been able to create a system around many things. I have a lot of people that help me in the role I do as an MLA. I have there's a group of people who were door knocking for me, and they converted themselves not supporters of Emily role. So over the summer, I had to knock $1,000 at Clayton Park West. I didn't do that all by myself. I had probably in total, maybe like 10, 15 persons in total at different times that came out to knock doors with me. So so that helps you with life. I think if you're able to create systems around everything you do, which is why I said that you don't try and run the race alone, run with people. It makes life easy, it makes life beautiful, and you're able to accomplish so much more. So people literally look at you and think you're performing magic.
That's a good one. What boundaries have you learned are necessary to sustain long-term leadership? Or to sustain leadership long-term?
I think rethinking many things. So I'll use this to talk to maybe blacks or immigrants generally. Sometimes people feel like they're discriminated and they don't understand why they were discriminated. Sometimes it's not because it was the color of your skin, it's because you don't understand protocol, right? Every system, every place has its own protocol. And I think it's your job to understand and figure out what is the protocol around a certain place. I've seen people who have access and they abuse. Access is trust, right? And many people don't understand that because you have access does not mean that you can utilize access the way you utilize. And so I see a lot of those errors, especially from people who look like me, whether it's historical black or people from the diaspora or the Caribbeans. I've seen us not understanding, because where we come from, right? We there's no boundaries. We don't. Those lines are a bit blurred, right? But when you are, at least in the Canadian system, I could tell from experience that there's a lot of boundaries. And many of those boundaries or many of those protocols are not spoken. You need to understand it. And so I've realized that has helped me, because it has helped me, and it also helps with your elevation, and it helps you because people trust you more because they understand that you recognize, because if something's unseen and you're able to see it, it means that you're putting on special glasses, you know? So I think it's important for people to recognize that if there's anything around that, is one of those things I would love people to get, understand the protocol of where you are, right?
And also understanding the process.
The process. So, I have access to the premier doesn't mean that there's some things I'll bring to the premier, right? You have access to this person doesn't mean those are the things you bring. You need to understand that access. And because if you abuse it, you're going to experience lockdowns.
Yes.
And the reason why you don't experience lockdowns is because you're obviously utilizing, and having proper mind, set around those things. So I think that for me is one of the things that's helped me in my leadership, understanding boundaries, and also because of that, I also have boundaries too.
So what can I can elicit from what you said is that you're practicing self-care.
Oh yes.
And self-care, my own perspective, is not a sign of wisdom, a weakness, but a sign of strength.
Oh, it's not. And you must understand, like I always say, that you're finite. Do you have you're not unlimited, so you're not infinite. So you have to recognize that it's not all things you can do. It's not all places you can be. People say, you go to a lot of events. I say, I receive probably times 2 of the events I go to. So
you can't be in different places at the same time.
Yeah, but I also recognize that I have to be in a lot because I'm in Clayton Park West where there are a lot of groups. There's a lot. It's the most diverse place in the whole of Nova Scotia. So you have to go literally. So you need to understand that. So you create a system around making that happen. So for example, maybe a particular community is inviting me for January 17th. I can't make it. I didn't do any other event in the course of the year. And then I'm able to say, okay, you're doing something in December. I'm going to put it in December. I'll lock it down now. So those are some of the things I try to do to balance some of those things.
Absolutely. We believed in you before the war did. And how did that belief shape your journey?
It's incredible. I think it's very impactful. There are a couple of individuals who've always felt some things were possible. One of such is John Ariel. I need to give a shout out to John Ariel out there. He's no longer in Nova Scotia. He's left us here in Nova Scotia. I remember when I was working in government and the guy would keep telling me, I can't wait for the time when I have to go start planting, the signs up and down. I was like, what are you saying? I think it helps you, the fact that you feel like there are people who have your back.
Yeah.
And I'm tremendously grateful. I have so many persons, people like you, people like Dr. There's so many of them, and I'm really honored, that the fact that I can call on people. I remember when, when the election was called, the first 2 weeks, I didn't even understand what was happening. We didn't understand how to use the system, nothing. We didn't, because we were just confused. But in the last 2 weeks, when we made a call to people showed up with their money, because it takes money to run an election,
exactly.
and I'm grateful. Yeah.
Good. Well, how do you approach mentorship, especially for those who don't yet see themselves represented?
That's a tricky one. Yeah. So is it more mentorship as towards me to them or someone to me?
Both.
Yeah. One of the biggest early mentors for me is my career. I would say it, anywhere loud and clear, is one of those people that made me realize that the things I thought were possible. So a particular example, I was assistant brand manager for Genesis, and so there's always this annual budget for you to be able to spend on campaigns, right? And the Nigerian community at that time was doing something. I was not, and I was under the leadership of Kunle, was the president at that time, FAKC, and they were looking for money. So I told them, we could try and sponsor. So I remember FAKC sent me the application form or something about what they needed. So the money he sent to me was so small. I think they were asking for $250. So I thought very insulted. $250. So I sent him back, said, can you double this? So he doubled it. He sent it back $5. So I said, no, can you double it again? So at the end of the day, I sat down with my manager. Obviously, at that point in time, there was no Nigerian community was not seen as our preferred market for buying Genesis and all that, because Genesis is a luxury car. And I remember making a pitch that, they're highly trained. At some point in time, they will be nice, to be part of that old journey. And at the end of the day, they gave me $2,000 from a $250 that they were asking for. And that's the kind of person my career was. It's the kind of person who made me feel like when I had those ideas and I shared those ideas that they were not insanity. And so I guess it's something, and I enjoy the mentorship, I enjoy our friendship, I won't say he's a mentor, but, I really do enjoy our relationship.
Your voice mattered, and he listened, active listening. If you could speak to your younger self just arriving in Canada, what would you say?
You're doing well.
I love that.
You're doing well.
Because in our culture, sometimes when you praise yourself, you may come across as arrogant but really.
So that's the mindset. So in Nigeria, you have to play yourself down.
Yes.
But in Canada, you can't.
You can't.
You have to be able to sell yourself. So so you need to understand the culture, which is why I said the protocols and because if you're working against the protocol, then it's going to break you.
Yeah.
But if you work with something, you're going to glide and fly. Just be like the eagle, just releasing your wings and I believe
And fly.
you fly. Yeah.
Good. And what message do you want everyone here and watching to carry forward from your story?
So there are a couple of things. I was recently interviewed by somebody in Dalhousie. He was a master's student in something around sustainability. And by the time we're done with the interview, the guy actually came up with a framework using my name. I'm like, oh, I'm going to write a book about it, So but one of the things he used, and I'm going to use my letter A, and I'll leave the rest for you later. And it was basically act fast.
Act fast.
And act fast is in the context of many a time we look at ourselves from the position of weakness of what we're not capable of being able to do, rather than from what we're able to do. And I say act fast, which basically means learning to seize the moment.
Seize the moment.
I talked about how life is in circles and promotions are in circles, right? Everything, the woman biology is in circles. Understanding that you have to do the right thing at the right time. And if you don't seize some moments, you might have to wait. And sometimes that wait might be 9 months, it might be 9 weeks, 9 days,
years.
but it could 9 years. So that's why I always tell people you have to learn to act fast when an opportunity actually takes place. And that's why, there's a letter that I always call constantly preparing, which is important. Like champions are not made in the ring, they're only discovered in the ring. Champions are made in the back room. So when you show up, somebody's like, oh, wow. Somebody will say, oh, you're so good in your oratory skills, your ability to captivate. That's what you're discovering in the public, but a lot of work has gone on in the back. And I think that's important for me to say to people, keep on improving on yourself. Never lose sight of becoming complacent. Whether you're a business owner or running a particular business, there's a place called forward, there's a place called better. There's always a place where you can keep advancing to. And I think one of the things that happens to people who come from a very disadvantaged background is that they settle too quickly and too soon. So you see, like the example I say is, look at Nigerian players, they play soccer really good, they get into certain money and they fade it. But look at now Messi or Ronaldo. Those guys are not playing for money anymore. They're playing for a name. They're playing, constantly improving themselves, constantly wanting to deliver because they feel that there's much more to offer. So if there's a mindset I want you to live here with, to live with the mindset of there's much more I can offer. And if you have that mindset, you will act fast and you keep prepared. Anyway, that's your boy. Adegoke.
Lovely. I love that ending. But before I just want to say, your journey brings us back to the heart of this show, being rooted in story and rising together through purpose, service, and community. Next is rapid fire chat and possible audience questions. I will be right back. Okay? I have questions for you.
Okay.
This segment, I call it the rapid fire.
Rapid
fire chat.
Do I have call a friend or something?
Yes, please. A belief about life or health you grew up with that actually worked.
Actually worked. I was thinking about one that didn't work. Which one actually worked? I don't know.
Well, that's an honest answer. For me, it's honey, lemon, and ginger. I just put it in warm water and it helps me soothe my throat.
Well, it works.
Yeah, well, there are home remedies that have medicinal benefits.
I suffered a lot from my mom because I used to play soccer and have a lot of injuries. So I don't know if they worked, but I got cured somewhere where they'll put stones on fire, a knife on fire to touch the wounds. I don't know.
Oh my God.
I remember those things. I used to have a lot of football. So sometimes I get injured and I will not tell her. And then the next morning I'm limping.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's to the extreme. But, well, we'll see. A myth about health, success, or identity you later learned wasn't true.
I don't know whether this one qualifies, but I remember when we just gave birth to my daughter, right? And so we were doing 100% exclusive. So we had this thought, like this narrative that if you're doing 100% breastfeeding and all that, that your wife can't take it. And lo and behold, 3 months into, my wife told me she was pregnant. I was like, what? Well, she was even afraid to tell me because I was like,
how do I explain this to you?
Because I was just lost in this world with this lovely cute baby girl I had, and like, wow, I just want to spend time taking care of her. And lo and behold, I didn't even think about another child.
I'll be honest, in science, there's no form of contraception that is 100%. That's the truth. And depending on how was there any water intake?
We were even doing water. That's the funny thing.
For the baby, nothing,
no
just strictly breastfeeding.
100%. As it wasn't like water, nothing. So I was like,
well, at least.
So that shocked me.
I know. But obviously we have different, level of efficacy for contraception, of which the highest is maybe Nexplanon and IUD, for example, Mirena, and that's intrauterine device like Mirena and all that. But obviously, they still have a margin of no contraception is 100%.
Maybe 99.99.
Exactly,
like that.
exactly.
Yeah.
That will be in the grade of all the Nexplanon, the IUDs and all of that. And then it starts to drop.
Right. I learned it. I love you, son.
I kind of said this already, like one home remedy or habit you still swear by today. One health habit you adopted after moving to Canada that changed your life.
That changed my life. Maybe having people around.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I think that's essential. I think having people around. So there's one day of the year I always look forward to is our Christmas hangout. I always look forward to it. Everybody within my circle knows that no matter how hard I work, I'm like that day. I'm just looking forward to it because always an amazing. It literally is more than a day because it always spills over to the day. But I'm always looking forward to that.
For me, growing up in Nigeria, you don't even have a choice. People kind of integrate their lives into yours. So that's social community spirit. But when I moved to abroad, whether in the UK, I had to be intentional about it. And that's what I changed. That changed my life. I needed to be intentional about maintaining social connection.
Yeah, if not, you might...
you end up on your own. Something you now do differently for yourself or children than how you were raised.
I think there's a lot though in that regard, but let me see which one I could easily pick. This obviously we there's a saying that they give birth to, but you rebirth yourself. There's a way they say that in the proverb. There are a couple of stuffs like obviously first of all, there are a couple of things that I do that my parents did. My father used to pick and drop my kids. One of the things that my father was always very present in our life. So I made sure I was very present even before my kids were born. I made all the doctor's appointments. I still brag it to tomorrow. All the doctor's appointments with my wife, even while I was in Nigeria, all of it. No matter how busy I was there. The first heartbeat, everything, I was in there. So I think what one I could probably relate with now, I probably have to think a bit more in terms of being different. Maybe game night.
Game night, yeah.
I think game night is something. I think it was a very novel idea of me because if I didn't do it, I'll feel very guilty, and so I always look forward to it because the way the game night works, each of us has a game that you must play. So everybody comes up with an idea of the game. So maybe it's dancing cup. There's always those stuff. It's always fun. And I actually truly enjoy it
and look forward
because it makes me feel like a child again, and I can see real laughter, real connection with my kids. And the kids are still young, so
yeah.
And
Good. And your go-to tip for staying well, you've already kind of mentioned it during busy seasons, like work pressure and back to school. Like, how do you...
For me, I love travel. I travel a lot, but as an elected official, that's one thing that's been affected a bit. Back in those days, I'm out. Everybody knows me. Every Monday public holiday like this, I've gone on a Friday or something. I've gone. So that has allowed me to see Nova Scotia, and I've seen Nova Scotia very well. And that's one of the reasons why I also started what they call the road trips. Those 2 road day trips to let people know that you don't have to take a vacation for you to be able to go somewhere. So I love travel, and I love travel so much that my son is in another level because he feels like his birthday must always be in an hotel, as he must wake up in an hotel. Kind of thing because it's always birds in summer, and so that always seems to happen. Yeah.
Great. And one small daily habit that keeps you grounded when life gets overwhelming.
I think I know how to pause. I know how to pause. I know how to have what I call the me time in the mornings. Because I read a lot. I'm constantly reading. I have a book in my car. I read, So I think my ability to just retract, that to just be by myself, to be able to look at everything, like in a 360 panorama review, I think that helps.
Honorable Adegoke Fadare, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here today on our show.
Thank you for having me. I hope that you enjoyed the time, and I hope your listeners will enjoy it too. But yeah, great show. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So my first question is, something that has really come out a lot in the discussion you've had has been mentor and mentorship. Like, how do you, or what advice would you have for someone that's like seeking a mentor? Not particularly with you, but also not particularly with you. And then the second one is something that really came out for me is how confident you are in in self-belief. Where is that from, and how can one cultivate that?
I think for me, mentorship, it's something that people need to be deliberate about. You must choose people based on the fact of understanding where you are going, what you want out of life, and one of the things that happened in my own story, Mike, was during my interview, he was curious about, because I probably at that time was probably the first Nigerian he had an encounter with. So he was curious, why would you come? Because I remember he kept on saying when they hired me, have you ever experienced Nova Scotia winters? I was like, no, I've just been here for just a few days. He couldn't wrap his head. He thought I was never going to survive the winter. I was going to run away, So for me, the conversations we had at that point, I felt someone who was genuine, someone who was interested in me, someone who is not threatened by my success, somebody who is not a tormentor, but someone who truly wants me to be who I am and to be able to grow. So I think those are important characteristics to look forward to. For me, mentorship also doesn't have to be, opportunity to sit down and always have those conversations all the time. It could be through books. It could be through messages, right? Look for people that help shape the narrative of where you are going. And that's why I can't more than emphasize the fact that you must be aware of where exactly is the destination. People would tell you that when I came to Canada, I told them I was going to do politics. I didn't just expect politics to happen as soon as it did. And I thought I was going to do it much later, right? But it happened much sooner than I thought, what I planned and all of that. And I guess those are things that happen based on acceleration, right? But you must know. So it's not like I'm here thinking that, how did I find myself in politics? No, I've always known I was going to do politics. So I think it's important for you to be very clear about your objective. Where does my confidence and my belief come? I think it comes from knowledge, was it Plato that said, know thyself? Right. I think it's important for you to know yourself. I know what my giftings are. I know what my capabilities are. So when I'm looking for relationships or partnerships, I'm not looking for someone who can do what I can do. I'm good at what I can do. So I'm looking for someone who can complement what I'm not able to do. And so that's why I'm deliberate. I'm deliberate with my friends. I'm deliberate with the circles that I belong to. I don't show up any and everywhere. If I do, I'll be in almost every event. I don't go to every event. I don't go to every community event. I don't see many birthday parties. Not because I don't get those invitations, although now they're realizing not to always invite me, but because I'm very deliberate with my life. I always say you have to be like a boxer who is not boxing, just the air. You have to be precise. If I'm going to land a punch, I'm going to land a punch that will make a meaning, that kind of thing. So you need to be that cognizant about things. So my confidence is the fact that I understand who I am. I'm not confused about it. And that's the reason why I keep talking to the next generation. That's why I have what I call Dare to Dream Camp, because I want our kids to dare to dream. I want people to dream without limits, because there's the only limitation you truly have in this life is the one that you have placed on yourself. That's the truth. There's nothing that stops you from being able to achieve that goal, that objective. Somebody else has done it if you can just search. So for me, I think that's where it comes from, the place of knowledge, And I'm also a person of faith. I'm grounded in the faith. And a lot of my, and also my culture, like she said, I can do it spirit. Yeah. We also have that mentality that, there's nothing, let's do it, that kind of thing.
Today wasn't just a conversation. It was a reminder. A reminder that leadership is human, that resilience is learned, and that our stories, when shared, have the power to change how we see ourselves and each other. Honorable Adegoke's journey reminds us that progress doesn't come from perfection, but from purpose, courage, and service. As we close this conversation, I invite you to carry one thing forward. Your story matters. Share this conversation, keep it alive, rooted in story, and rising together. My name is Dr. Agnes Chinelo, and this is Talk with Dr. Agnes. Until next time, take care of your health, your purpose, and each other. See you soon.